belonging to the depositors. Suppose those assets of the, I do not know, belong to the depositors at the Bank of Antigua. Suppose they were bought from deposits. They do not know. No, how could they be? How could they be? You know how much $1 billion Stanford have on his balance sheet in deposits, which is a liability. So where's the corresponding asset to prove the liabilities? So you can go and grab up the assets first. You can't do that. Antiguans and Barbudans have deposits in that bank. And all the Antiguans and Barbudans have deposits in SIB. You do not know as yet how many Antiguans and what value and what is the total amount of liability to the Antiguan public of deposits at Stanford International Bank. And they would have to be settled before government. No valuation have been done yet of the assets. I mean, what is really wrong with you people? Just to come to this parliament because it's 2 weeks before the election to try and hide your abysmal failure to generate one single foreign investor in this country. Not one single new job has been created in 5 years. So this is an excuse today. The brutal imposition of tax, of personal income tax. I mean, come on. Is this a mechanism to create an illusion of growth that the Minister of Finance has imposed unbearable taxation? So you're coming here today and saying we're doing something at the last 11th hour? Just like at the 11th hour, after you've said that the land for youth is unconstitutional, you have the Ministry of Lands calling up all the young people and telling them come for the lands after 4.5 years?
Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker, the only thing that the UPP is concerned about at this moment is the political benefit that it may derive from acquiring Stanford's land 2 weeks before an election. After years of boasting of the multi-million-dollar benefits from their alliance with the same Stanford, he now becomes public enemy number one. They're so shameless, Madam Speaker, that they now give the impression that all of this was somebody else's fault, even though the SEC investigation was for the period from 2005 to 2009, during the scorching heat of government in the sunshine. 2005 to 2009, the SEC is not investigating anything prior to 2005. There was a time, Madam Speaker, when they boasted through the length and breadth of Antigua and Barbuda that they stand for the Alliance for Development through education and empowerment was the model of how government deals with investors. Madam Speaker, we were told that this alliance, when he says derogatory remarks, you see how you smile, Madam Speaker? That's okay. We were told, Madam Speaker. Pardon me?
I'm smiling with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll smile back at you too. But the people have out there nothing to smile about. Grace Farm and Green Bay has nothing to smile about. So let's not smile today, Madam Speaker. Let's not smile. We were told, Madam Speaker, that this alliance would generate over $30 million a year in taxes from the Ghana Island project starting in fiscal year 2008. Starting in fiscal year 2008, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And Madam Speaker, as the UPP tries desperately to distance itself from Alan Stanford in light of his difficulties with the SEC, it is very necessary to remind the Honourable Member for St. John's Wool West, the Honourable Prime Minister and company, about the glory days, Madam Speaker, of their romance with the Texan billionaire investor who achieved great things for this country under the Antigua Labour Party. He did. He invested hundreds of millions of dollars. And for years he created gainful employment. And when we were struck with 2 hurricanes, he helped the people of this country. He sent containers and containers of food and shelter. He sent generators to put on to Antigua and Barbuda Defence Force. I don't care whether you like me or not, but I like you. And you like me, and that's what matters. And you don't like Baldwin. That's what matters. Now why does Stanford like me? So that's what matters. But that don't matter whether Stanford like me. It's not about Stanford. It's about what he has done for the country in our hour of need. You're not protecting our workers.
Honourable
You're
Member.
coming here, Madam Speaker, to score cheap political points, Madam Speaker.
You have, Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I started at 1:45. No, Madam Speaker, I started at 1:45. 1:45, Madam Speaker, I want some extra time for all the interruptions, Madam Speaker. I need half an hour more, Madam Speaker. I was interrupted, I need half an hour more. Why did I want to give us? Madam Speaker, I want a half an hour more. I was interrupted.
Honourable Member, you know that it is a House that grants extra time.
I know, but I started at 1:45.
Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I'd like some extra time.
The House has said no.
Starting now, Madam Speaker, 5 minutes. Madam Speaker, the 2005 budget statement was entitled Foundations for a Fresh Start. As I read this excerpt, beginning at page 70, with your permission, Madam Speaker, I invite my colleagues on the other side to respond with the same excitement that exploded in this honourable House when the Finance Minister was gleefully driving what he hoped were nails in the ALP coffin. And with your permission, I read from the Minister of Finance at page 70, and I quote, culminating the fundamentals negotiated in Saturday's meeting with the Prime Minister, Mr. Alan Stanford, this government's green light for Mr. Stanford's acquisition of Ghana Island and other lands to which Dato Tan Kehok presumably holds title. The Stanford plan for development of the land package, which is negotiating to acquire from the current title holder, is envisaged at $3 billion upscale resort. The project is expected to generate continuing employment for 1,200 persons in direct and indirect jobs over its 36 months construction period. Mr. Stanford has proposed a front-end cooperation arrangement, this is our court saying this in the budget, under which tax concessions will be deferred for 30 years, while you will pay a monthly flat tax amounting to $34.4 million a year, starting January 2008, aggregating to more than $1 billion over 30 years. Full project funds on hand for the entire project, which will cater to the wealthiest people in the world and will open its doors with $400 million in cash. End of quote. That's the Minister of Finance. What we do have to show today, Madam Speaker, for all that grandstanding and that crass political one-upmanship in the People's Parliament back in 2004, Madam Speaker, and as recently as last year, they tried to shake down the same Alan Stanford for $450 million in order to facilitate a proposed $2 billion investment at Shell Beach. Look at the cabinet decision. $450 billion. They tried to ask him to forgive them $300 million owed to Stanford Group of Companies and an upfront payment of the Treasury by Stanford of $100 million. You will read it. You will read it. Madam Speaker, we must never forget that Baldwin Spencer was so big on the Stanford Alliance that he actually staked his political future on it. And I quote for this country to remember what he said. And I quote, I have said it before,